The GAO released a report that kind of like this boat, our nation's air traffic control system is unsupportable. We really need to talk about it. Hey there. The General Accountability Office, or GAO, is a federal office that helps Congress oversee government operations. They are nonpartisan and provide a balanced view of successes, failures, and challenges. Now the GAO has released a absolutely scathing report on the FAA's National Airspace System status. They found that of the 138 systems that make up our country's air traffic control system, 51 of them are unsustainable, and another 54 are on the verge of being unsustainable. Oh my God, blow my mind. What? 76% of our nation's air traffic control system is falling apart? Really? Add this to the staffing crisis of air traffic controllers, and you have to wonder, what the heck are they doing on 800 Independence Avenue? Recall in January of 2023, the FAA's NOTAM systems failed, and it was a super old system, which caused a nationwide, actually a global impacting ground stop, something that hadn't happened since September 11th. That was a real wake-up call. And yes, the FAA has taken lots of actions, but they are taking lots of actions with 90 of those unsustainable systems. But the GAO also identified that after the NOTAMs incident, the FAA took action, made an operational review, but they didn't reprioritize a darn thing. Nothing. The GAO has 7 recommendations for the FAA, and hey, they're fine. Bottom line is the FAA needs to get its act together, but that is way too soft. So let me go down some bunny trails. The FAA has its own acquisition system, a unique policy in the federal government designed as a life cycle management system so that the GAO never ever has to write a report like they just did. Obviously, this is not working. The FAA a few years ago had a backlog of capital investments of about $8 billion. That's according to a statement provided by the former Deputy Administrator, Mr. Brad Mims. And then the FAA was appropriated $5 billion for infrastructure, known as the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. That should have put a sizable dent into things like unsustainable systems. But then in March of this year, the FAA made a supplemental budget request for FY25 for another $8 billion. So let's do some little math here. $20 billion over 20 years sunk into the Next Gen program, which was supposed to be the FAA's plan for a new air traffic control system. Another $5 billion for infrastructure money, and now we see that we need an additional $8 billion. That is $33 billion on top of the $3 billion annual capital investment that they get appropriated. Where has all this money gone, and where would it go? It certainly has not been helping the 138 unsupportable systems. In 2004, the FAA reorganized into the Air Traffic Organization. So the ATC system and its investments would operate more like a business. As a matter of fact, it's one of the criteria for the COO to have business acumen. Well, titles that sound like businesses don't make things work like a business. The FAA has cool titles, like they have Chief Operating Officer and a Chief Financial Officer and lots of Vice Presidents. And the result after 20 years is a crumbling ATC system. It is time to hit the reset button. All I have been hearing since this report was released that the FAA needs more money. Congress, my message, do not give them more money. No way anyone in their right mind would throw billions of dollars to an agency that can't sustain itself and can't modernize to keep up with its responsibilities. They can't have more money without some serious changes. Changes that allow Congress and the public to hold people accountable and make sure stuff gets done. I don't even want to think about what if the FAA fails. That gives me worse headache than I already have. GAO doesn't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk. Nobody wants to talk about it. But we certainly need to fix it. The organization is ineffective and the acquisition system doesn't work. Those are good places to start an overhaul, so GAO never ever has to write this kind of document again. I'll link to the GAO report in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on the subject. Seems like we have some big fixings to do. So before I get to an example of how the FAA fails in its modernization efforts, thanks for being here. If you're new here, please subscribe, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell if you want to know about new videos. So let's move on to electronic flight strips. Yes, a flight progress strip is a small, long piece of paper that presents information to the air traffic controller on the individual flight of an aircraft. It provides information for ATC to use to keep traffic safe and properly separated and orderly, like who the aircraft is, and transponder codes, and routes of flights, and altitudes, and destinations, and other important information about how they're equipped and what they can do. Very important stuff. Add in some specific waypoints and where they'll be flying, and add some time, and air traffic controllers actually have the skills necessary, even without radar, to keep those airplanes apart, as long as they can talk to them. And that is truly an art form, and an underappreciated art form of the air traffic control profession. Well, most of the modern world, the modern air traffic world, has moved from paper flight strips to an electronic version. All facilities in Canada have had electronic flight strips since 2009. So what about the FAA? Well, finally, the FAA was coming on board with their version of electronic flight strips with a program called Terminal Flight Data Manager, TFDM. The TFDM contract was to provide electronic flight strip capability and some other stuff to 89 air traffic control towers, woefully short of the about 200 towers that the FAA actually operates, and not even a smidgen of close to the, when you add the contract towers that the FAA actually oversees at another 264 airports. But we aren't even close to getting to that. Due to cost overruns, the FAA is scaling back the program to just 49 air traffic control towers, about 10% of what the FAA actually oversees for air traffic control. And only half of those are getting include all the functionality that was planned. I don't know what the other half they're getting. I guess they're just getting the electronic flight strips portion, even though there's some very important surface management capabilities that come along with this project. So what are we doing here? The program is important to moving into the modern world, and we are not doing that. We are making 10% of the towers different than the rest of the towers, and that has cost implications. We aren't deploying needed infrastructure and needed capabilities for safety. After witnessing so many safety challenges on the surface over the past 2 years, you'd think this would be a priority. The National Airspace System is becoming ad hoc, piecemeal, just thrown together willy-nilly. There isn't one National Airspace System. There are a whole bunch, and that is expensive. That is unwieldy. And where safety is concerned, it seems that the architecture is moving in the complete wrong direction. If the FAA can't afford systems everywhere and they can't justify or think that it's warranted, then they should establish the criteria so it's clear on who needs it and who doesn't. You don't start with 89 and wind up with 49 and wind up with half of that and then think it's all okay. That is not success. In the end, we are spending millions of dollars on a very small number of facilities that may or may not need that capability. Certainly, the capability wasn't necessarily for the 89, otherwise we'd be deploying to 89. Do we really need to invest in those capabilities for the future. And if we do, when we move to electronic flight strips, shouldn't we move to electronic flight strips everywhere? We need to ask the hard questions. So, how did the UK, Australia, Italy, Canada, Dubai get it done? Hey, I'm just asking for a friend. How'd you do it? Thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time. We are spending millions of dollars on a small number of facilities to have some capability. We need to think